Okay, so get this. Today, we're talking about Peanut the squirrel.
Peanut the squirrel.
Yeah, the one from New York. He became a bit of an internet sensation.
Oh, right. The one that,
Yeah, sadly, he was euthanized.
oh, that's right. After he bit someone, right?
Yeah, and then everyone online just went
And
crazy.
people were really upset.
Yeah, really upset. And, our listeners sent in all of these online discussions
Oh, wow.
and wanted us to sort of deep dive into it all.
Okay.
So today, we are going to be diving deep into everything that happened with Peanut the squirrel.
So we're going beyond just the headlines.
Exactly. We're going to go beyond the headlines, look at all the different perspectives, the facts.
What are some of the big issues that this story brings up?
Well, we're going to be looking at pet ownership, public safety,
Okay.
and even the U.S. healthcare system.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack from just a story about a squirrel.
I know, right? It's crazy how much this little squirrel has kind of, it's touched on all these important topics.
So for our listener who sent this in and anyone else listening
Yeah.
who wants to kind of understand this a little better.
We're trying to break it down for you, give
Yeah.
you the facts, the different viewpoints.
Okay, so where do we even begin with all of this?
Well, why don't we start with just Peanut's story?
Okay.
So Peanut was a pet squirrel in New York,
Okay.
and he ended up being euthanized
Right.
because he bit someone.
Yeah, and the irony of the whole thing is that he tested negative for rabies.
Oh, that's just really sad.
Yeah, it's just really sad.
Yeah.
And reading through all these online discussions, it seems like,
Everyone is asking, like,
could this happen?
yeah, how could this happen?
You know?
Like, what even, yeah.
And it really brings up the whole issue of owning wild animals as pets.
Right, and there are rules, right? You can't just
Well,
have any animal you want.
exactly. And one Reddit user, actually, Eula Switchos, said that there are rules.
About having pets. Yeah, they said there are rules about having pets. You can't just have whatever you want with no consequence.
And it seems like in this case, maybe the owner
Yeah, maybe.
didn't quite follow all the rules. Yeah.
Yeah, there are permits and vaccinations and things like that.
It's complicated because on the one hand, people want the freedom to choose.
To shoot their pets.
But then there's also this responsibility to keep everyone safe.
Exactly, keep everyone safe.
Yeah, where do you draw the line, right?
Exactly. And the internet definitely had a lot to say about that.
I bet they did.
Oh my gosh, yeah. There were people, some people were just furious with the owner.
I can imagine.
Oh yeah, like Yuri Echo said, he had 7 years to get him legal as a pet.
Yeah.
And just never did, and cries when he's faced with the consequences of his actions.
Wow. Yeah, there was definitely some blame going towards the owner.
Oh, absolutely.
But was there anyone who had any sympathy for
Yeah.
the owner?
A lot of sympathy for Peanut.
For Peanut, okay. Like, did they see him as more of a victim in all of this?
Yeah, like uclaude2113 said, "Don't get me wrong, dude's an asshole. However,
Yeah.
I think euthanizing the squirrel was throwing the baby out with the bathwater."
Oh, so they kind of, they recognized that the owner
Mhm.
maybe didn't do the right thing, but they still felt like the squirrel.
Was punished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard, right? Because I think everybody knows rabies is serious,
Right.
but was euthanasia, was that really the only option?
Well, that seems to be, one of the big questions here.
Yeah.
And it seemed to be a big topic in these discussions.
Were people, terrified of rabies? Or did they,
Kind of all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah, like some were terrified, others seemed pretty chill about it.
Okay.
But I think to understand this story,
Yeah.
we need to understand rabies.
Yeah.
So,
So maybe you can break it down for us.
yeah, how dangerous is it? And why are the protocols in the U.S. so strict?
Sure. So rabies is a viral disease, and it affects the central nervous system. And what makes it so dangerous is that once symptoms appear,
Yeah.
it's almost always fatal.
There's no cure.
There's no cure. And that's why, especially in the U.S., prevention and control measures are so strict.
So, it makes sense, right? If someone gets bitten,
Yeah.
there's like a real sense of urgency.
Yeah, you have to act fast.
Yeah. But, I was reading through these comments, and your granddad Sack said that there are no recorded cases of a squirrel passing rabies to humans, and it's generally not recommended to administer a rabies shot after being bitten by a squirrel unless the squirrel is exhibiting rabies symptoms.
Interesting.
So it seems like squirrels aren't really...
Main carriers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Squirrels are actually very low risk
When it comes to rabies?
when it comes to rabies. But that doesn't mean that you should just ignore an animal bite.
Right.
Every case needs to be assessed carefully by a doctor.
That's
There are
right.
other diseases that squirrels can carry.
Right. So even if the risk is low, there's still a risk.
there's still a risk.
And you have to, like, weigh that against the consequences.
Exactly.
And sometimes those decisions are difficult.
They are.
And there was actually another user, You Chocolate Spaghetti, who shared this story about being bitten by a squirrel as a child
Okay.
and didn't receive a rabies shot.
Oh, wow.
The doctor at the time decided that the risk was low enough.
Interesting. So medical practices
Have evolved.
Yeah.
Have evolved. And maybe our understanding of rabies has evolved.
Absolutely. And another user, Jurger Corvus, even pointed out that back then, that doctor was essentially
Rolling the dice.
rolling the dice. Yeah.
By not giving the shot.
It's a good point. Yeah.
It makes you think about how seriously they take this disease, right?
Mm-hmm. And, you know, it also makes you think about
The cost of all of this.
the cost. Yeah.
Medical care.
Yeah. And that was another big thing that came up in all these discussions.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like Hugh Jefferton 123 talked about their spouse getting bitten by a feral cat
Oh,
and racked up an $800 hospital bill for a cat bite.
yeah, basically for minimal treatment.
No.
Just a checkup, some gauze, and antibiotics.
That's pretty typical in the U.S., unfortunately.
It is, and this leads us to kind of another thread in this story,
Okay.
which is the difference in healthcare costs between the U.S.
And other countries.
and other countries, yeah.
Okay.
A lot of people from other countries were chiming in, like Udares47 said rabies shots cost like $100 in their country.
Wow.
Yeah, Yuskabadinam talked about paying €60 for rabies treatment in Austria.
Okay.
And then Judge A96 said that common vaccines are free in Germany.
So free.
Yeah, so it's like,
That's a huge difference.
it is a huge difference. And it kind of, for someone like Udisco Potato 69,
Yeah.
who lives in a third world country,
That's what they say.
we have free rabies shots. And even in private institutions, they cost about $6 a shot. No insurance, nothing. I'm worried about y'all moth.
I mean, their reaction is understandable.
Totally.
The cost of healthcare in the U.S. is a big barrier, especially when something like this happens.
Yeah, like an animal bite.
Unexpected.
A lot to think about, and we're just getting started.
I know we've got...
We've got so much more to go.
Yeah. What else is there?
So before we were talking about the healthcare costs in the U.S.
Yeah.
and how that was a big thing that stood out in a lot of these comments.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? How this squirrel incident has kind of turned into
This whole thing.
a conversation about healthcare costs.
A lot of people pointed out that in Europe, rabies vaccines are much more affordable.
Right. Much more available.
Yeah, and I mean, in the U.S., it's
The cost can be really high.
super high.
And, you know, it's not just the cost, it's
The approach.
the whole approach, yeah.
Like, they seem to be more focused on vaccination.
In Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, less reliant on euthanasia
Yeah.
for testing.
Yeah, and maybe that's because rabies is less prevalent there.
Right.
But in the U.S., I mean, the fear of rabies is
Oh, yeah.
huge.
It's a big deal.
And maybe that fear, coupled with the high cost of treatment,
Makes people
Well, so-
just more cautious.
more cautious. Yeah.
Yeah. Which makes me think about those who were questioning why they had to euthanize Peanut.
Right, especially because he tested negative.
Yeah.
In other countries, there are other ways to test for rabies
Right. That don't involve.
that don't involve killing the animal.
Yeah.
But, those methods aren't always available.
Right. It depends.
It depends on the resources, the infrastructure.
So, I mean, it makes you wonder if healthcare wasn't such a big factor,
Yeah.
would things have been different?
It's hard to say, but it's an interesting question.
It is.
Maybe if treatment was more affordable,
Yeah.
there wouldn't be as much pressure to euthanize right away.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's something to think about.
Okay, so we've talked about rabies and the cost of healthcare and
Owning wild animals?
owning wild animals, yeah. The responsibilities that come with that.
Yeah, but there's another piece of this whole thing we need to talk about.
Social media.
Social media, yes.
How could I forget?
I know, there's so much to this story.
It's a big one.
So, social media, how do you think it played into all of this?
Well, I think it might have influenced the owner's choices
Yeah.
and definitely the public's reaction.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, people were really quick to judge.
Oh, yeah. They were very critical of the owner.
A lot of people thought he was more concerned with getting likes.
Than with the squirrel.
Yeah, with Peanut's well-being.
Right. And there was, Yama Tepcat even compared the owner to Elon Musk.
Elon Musk.
Yeah. They said, replace him with Elon Musk. Elon Musk had a squirrel that he refused to vaccinate and get permits for. Police came into his house and killed it. We'd hear deserved. in every single comment here.
Wow. So they're saying that
It's about, like,
it's about how we judge people, right?
yeah, it's like, are we judging him because of his,
Well, because of who he is.
yeah, like, are we judging him more harshly because he's not Elon Musk?
Because he's not a celebrity.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
It makes you think.
It does.
And U Palm Street Party 77, they even said they thought maybe if the owner had just stayed off social media,
None of this would have happened.
yeah, this whole thing could have been avoided.
It's impossible to know for sure, but
But it makes you think about, like,
the influence of it media.
yeah, the
What
influence.
does it affect our choices?
Right, and the consequences.
The consequence, yeah, because social media, it can be a good thing,
It can.
but it can also amplify our mistakes,
Right.
our vulnerabilities.
Yeah, expose us to judgment.
Exactly.
And I think in a case like Peanuts,
Where people are so divided.
yeah, and emotions are high,
It can lead to a lot of
misinformation.
misinformation, yeah, and outrage.
This is all so complex.
It is.
It seems like there are no easy answers.
Well, that's the thing about complex issues. There are multiple perspectives.
Conflicting values.
Unintended consequences.
A lot.
It is, but even though it's difficult,
Yeah.
I think we can still learn from it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Peanut's story can teach us so much about responsible pet ownership,
Right.
about understanding and respecting wildlife.
Yeah, and the healthcare system,
Yeah, the healthcare system, and it also makes us think about social media.
how it affects us. Yeah.
Yeah, and the impact of our online actions.
It's all connected.
It is. It really is.
Yeah, and it shows that even a story about a squirrel.
Can have a much deeper meaning.
Exactly. It can reveal a lot about us.
Our values, our fears, our hopes.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the biggest thing you hope people will take away from this?
I think the most important thing is to remember that every story has layers.
Like an onion.
Like an onion, yeah.
Yeah.
There's always more to uncover, more to learn, more to understand.
So curiosity is key.
Curiosity is key, exactly.
It's not just about the knowledge. It's about what we do with it.
Right. Use that knowledge to think critically.
Yeah.
Have conversations, make informed choices.
Peanut's story has definitely given us a lot to think about,
It has.
even though it is a sad story.
Yeah.
But it's reminded us of the power of stories.
To connect us, yeah.
Yeah.
To challenge us.
To make us better.
And hopefully to inspire us to create a better world.
For everyone.
For everyone. For us. For animals.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this part of our deep dive into Peanut the squirrel.
Wow. We covered a lot of ground.
I know.
From pet ownership to rabies to healthcare to social media.
It's all connected.
It really is.
But we don't want leave you feeling overwhelmed.
No, not at all.
We want you to feel
empowered,
yes.
to ask questions.
To challenge things.
To be a voice for change.
No matter how small.
No matter how small,
Yeah.
that's how we make a difference.
So we're going to leave you with a final thought. If you could change any part of this story,
Any part.
the laws, the healthcare system, the role of social media.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is. What would you change and why?
Think about it.
Think about it, because change starts with
Awareness
and
the willingness to imagine something better.
we believe that anyone can make a difference.
We do.
And we hope that this deep dive has given you the tools to do that.
The knowledge, the perspective.
The inspiration.
The inspiration, yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the surprisingly deep world of Peanut the squirrel.
We hope you'll keep exploring these issues.
And engaging in these conversations.
Yeah, keep diving deep.
And until next time, stay curious.
Stay curious.
It's amazing how Peanut's story got such a huge reaction online.
I know, right?
It really...
it's like it became this
Rorschach test.
A Rorschach test, yeah.
For everyone's,
deeply held beliefs.
Beliefs and anxieties.
Like, if you're worried about the government, you saw this as an example of too many regulations.
Yeah, like regulations gone too far.
And if you were frustrated with the healthcare system...
And you saw its shortcomings.
Exactly.
And for animal lovers, it was a
call to action.
Yeah, like be responsible.
Be responsible pet owners.
It's incredible how this one little squirrel...
Yeah, he became this symbol.
Yeah, like he was holding up a mirror...
To society.
Yeah. And making us look at these
uncomfortable truths.
Truths about ourselves.
And about the systems we've created.
And I think that's what's so fascinating about this story.
Yeah, it's not just about the squirrel.
It's about what it tells us about ourselves.
Exactly. Our values, our fears.
Right. So now that we've looked in the mirror...
What do we do?
Yeah, what do we do with this information?
That's the big question.
Because awareness is one thing.
Right. It's a start.
But then it's about taking action.
So what do we do?
So for all of our listeners out there who, are ready to take action,
Yeah, they're fired up.
yeah, where do we even begin?
Well, start with what you're passionate about.
Okay.
Like, if it's animal welfare,
Yeah.
maybe you research the laws in your area
Okay.
or volunteer at a shelter.
Or even advocate for some policy changes.
Exactly.
And what about for those who are, really concerned about the healthcare costs?
Right. There's a lot you can do there, too.
Like what?
You can research different healthcare models.
Okay.
You can contact your representatives.
Share your concerns.
Yeah, even just talking to your friends and family.
Just raising awareness.
Raising awareness can make a difference.
I love that.
It's about realizing that we're not just passive observers.
We can actually do something.
We can make a difference.
And that brings us back to what we've been talking about.
Yeah, we want you to feel empowered.
Empowered
Asking questions.
to challenge things.
That make a change.
Even a small change.
Because every little bit helps.
So we're going to leave you with one last thing to think about.
One last thing.
Let's not forget about the emotional side of this story.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
That bond between a person and their pet
Even if it's a squirrel.
is a powerful thing.
And to lose that bond,
Especially like this.
it's devastating.
It really makes you think about.
Empathy, grief, connection.
So as we end this deep dive,
Take some time to reflect.
what does this story say about our relationship with animals?
With each other.
With the world around us?
Yeah, how do we handle these big emotions?
The joy, the sorrow, the responsibility.
It's complicated.
It is, but we hope this deep dive has given you something to think about.
Some new perspective.
And maybe even some hope.
Because even though Peanut's story is over,
The conversation isn't.
it's up to all of us to decide what happens next.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of Peanut the Squirrel.
We hope you'll keep exploring,
Keep questioning.
keep diving deep,
And until next time,
stay curious.
and stay engaged.
The world needs your voice.